Now, the presidency says it's making good progress in establishing a system that will ensure action is taken against those implicated special investigating unit reports. In particular, it wants to tighten the screws on public servants who resign before they can face disciplinary action or criminal sanction. It presented the design of its new monitoring system to Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, that's SCOPA, today. My colleague Lindsay Dentlinger in Cape Town following that story for us. She's joining us now from our studios in Cape Town. Good afternoon, Lindsay. So in this matter, what kind of progress did the presidency say it's making?
So, Dan, I just want to take you and our viewers just back a little bit as to why we've arrived at this point where we are right now. And it was late last year when SCOPA really raised the alarm and the concern that the SIU produces many reports in a year, and that nothing really was being done to check that those who have been highlighted in those reports of having possibly committed wrongdoing, that any action was being taken against them. We saw the minister in the presidency, Mondli Gungubele, before SCOPA earlier this year, acknowledging that there really was no system to monitor that action was being taken, and it is in result of the promises that he made at that time, saying he would come back to Parliament with a plan as to how they are going to keep track of these people and make sure that they face consequences, that we are at this point where we are today, and an official in that presidency indicating to Parliament what they have done to date, which is largely create a technical system. It's quite technical, Dan, in terms of how the system will work. It's a dashboard, and using all those kinds of jargon to explain the system that they have been working on, that they've been developing, which will help them to track whether departments have been going after those implicated in these SIU reports. We heard again today, it's not the first time we've heard this, that departments appear to be reluctant to take disciplinary action against officials who are implicated in these reports. And even when they do, there's no system to monitor what the outcome is, or that these disciplinary processes have been followed through, or, as you've mentioned in your introduction there, that in fact people don't resign and leave the civil service so that they can avoid these kinds of disciplinary actions, or they just emerge again sometime again down the line somewhere else, and there is no way to know that they've evaded a disciplinary process in another department previously. And so these are all the kinds of things we heard today, how the systems across departments don't really speak to each other. And so these people are managing to move between departments and managing to evade any kind of sanction being taken against them once they've been implicated in these SIU reports. But here's the man behind this monitoring system explaining to Parliament exactly what they hope, once it's fully up and running, what it intends to achieve.
We've also done data cleansing on the PPE referrals and doing cross-checking against PERSAL. DPSA has embarked on a follow-up correspondence to all national and provincial departments affected by referrals from the PPE report, in line with Section 50 of the Palmer Act. And this correspondence has also included instructions to the accounting officers to update and track these cases on the PERSAL system. So now we are able to look at PERSAL and see the levels of compliance and then follow up. And the process of establishing standard operating procedures for handling SIU disciplinary referrals has been initiated. So the next steps that we're currently working on is to develop, DPSA is looking at developing measures for consequence management for non-compliance on reporting on disciplinary cases.
Lindsay, what about the possible loopholes? I mean, what has been said about them? I mean, most systems, even the best of them in the world, there's gaps here and there.
There are indeed, Dan, and as I mentioned previously, some of those loopholes are how to avoid people avoiding sanction. We've heard today that over 65,000 cases have been referred just in the last 2 years by the SIU for some form of administrative action. There's over 560 cases referred to the National Prosecuting Authority for possible criminal sanction. So it's a lot, as you can imagine, to keep track of, Dan, and the systems don't necessarily speak to one another across the civil service to keep track of this. But what they are hoping in terms of the SIU, saying that they are heartened that something is being done about making sure that we're not just spending taxpayers' money doing these investigations and then no one is held responsible. It was the chairperson of SCOPA who previously, in relation to this matter, spoke about SIU reports gathering dust. And today, Andy Mutibi, the head of the SIU, saying that there is now good collaboration between the SIU and the presidency to make sure that the system that they are implementing works. But Dan, it's not only about departments, government departments. He wants to also see that the system works in state institutions. There are many cases, for example, Eskom and Transnet, where people need to be tracked down and followed up for possible sanction to be taken against them. And so Andy Mutibi said it's not just about nabbing the individuals, but also hoping that some of the recommendations that they make, which will lead to systemic changes in government and certainly how the administration operates, that those too will be eventually incorporated in the system to keep track whether the recommendations that are made are followed through. Here's the SIU head, Andy Mutibi.
It will be very important also to interface this process with the AGSA and the overall work of AGSA, where all of this work that the team is doing from the presidency could then inform the audit plans and the improvement plans that needs to be done. As the team indicates that this is evolving, I'm sure it will evolve to a stage where we will include the systemic recommendations. I know at the moment it's focusing on the 3, but the inclusion of the systemic recommendations will be advised going forward, because that's part of the area which sees the improvements of the overall administration.
Okay, those comments there ending that update from my colleague Lindsay Dentlinger from our studios in Cape Town.